In this show, Intel will make M1 max level efficiency chips by 2023, does Lumafusion on Android mean final cut on iPad, render times on M1 Max, M2 and A16 production schedule, and will we ever get landscape mode back on the iPhone home screen? Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell. Intel is planning to make chips with the efficiency of Apple's M1 Max by late 2023 or early 2024, according to a leaked roadmap from the processor maker, just 2 to 3 years after Apple achieved it. These would be Intel's 15th generation Arrow Lake chips, but we've heard much about Intel's plans for getting efficiency from their chips in the past. Have they finally worked out how to get their chips more efficient? Have they managed to bring their process down to 5 nanometers like Apple's chips made at TSMC? Well, no, not really. Instead of making the chips themselves, they appear to be outsourcing the production to TSMC themselves, using the 3 nanometer process expected to be ready by then to go into production. So, suddenly it sounds a little bit less impressive. Intel will use someone else's manufacturing, using a process that is a 40% node size reduction versus Apple's chips that were made on the 5 nanometer process about a year ago. 3 years late, and clearly a 40% less efficient design, compensated by the efficiency of the process. Once you start breaking these things down, Intel's plans seem far less impressive, and of course we assume that Apple won't be resting on their laurels either, and by the time that these arrive, Apple will most likely be a couple of generations further along too, and also using TSMC's 3 nanometer process themselves. Tim Cook is legendary in the industry for booking out chip capacity way in advance, part of the reason that supply constraints on Apple's hardware have been a lot less severe than on PC hardware like GPUs, and even the kind of chips that have held back car production around the world. The silicon shortage hasn't been driven by a lack of sand, but the increased demand that so many more products becoming smart has led to, from cars to appliances, or even robot vacuums and the like. On that topic, robot vacuum review coming very soon. But of course the pandemic, also with everyone working from home, upgrading their devices, has also led to increased demand too. But we are actually expecting to see some of Apple's next generation chips very soon, like within the next couple of weeks soon, when Apple's rumoured March 8th event is likely to introduce the M2 based on the A15 chip architecture. I know that many are saying Apple would never release an M2 before all of the M1 Max and Duo products are out, but that's just a basic misunderstanding of how these chips are going to work. Apple will still happily sell the 2019 Mac Pro with old Xeon chips, and has happily kept selling various slower models even at higher prices, like the Intel Mac Mini that's still available from Apple today. So by the time Intel does come out with these Arrow Lake chips, I think we'll be seeing some truly insane efficient performance from Apple's M2 Max and maybe even M3 Max chips on the same 3 nanometer processors. And if they're going into M2 and M3 Max Duo or Quad systems for Mac Pros, even more. But remember, one of the biggest limitations of the M1 Max right now is the graphics performance compared to discrete graphics options in a laptop like the 3090 from Nvidia. But the A15 got around 55% more graphics performance than A14, and that's what the M1 is based on. So expect M2 and M2 Pro or Max to make big leaps here as well. Let me know your thoughts on Intel's roadmap down in the comments section, where you can also ask your iCave answers too, and let's get on with those now. FB London asks, iCave answers, do you think Lumafusion coming to Android means that Apple may at last be releasing Pro apps for the iPad this year, and LumaTouch have a heads up, or do you think they were always going to release an Android version? Now, I'm really hoping that we do get these Pro apps, we get Final Cut Pro, we get Logic and the like on iPad. We've been saying this for a long time. I think it does require a full rebuild, and I think the software teams probably have a harder time working in that way remotely, which is still going on a little bit at Apple, compared to hardware teams who I think have been working more in person anyway, because it's a much more hands-on thing. So I don't think that Lumafusion coming to the Android is anything to do with whether we'll get those or not. I think they always intended to put it onto Android, but always the first place to go is the iPhone, because you have a lot less devices to kind of optimize everything for. We're actually recording this using Lumafusion as we speak. That's what I record this show on an iPhone 12 Pro Max. But obviously Lumafusion only has sort of 1 chip a year to worry about, and it's much easier for them to do. With Android, there's a lot more fragmentation, and pretty much I think it's almost guaranteed that it will be pirated and put out on side-loading sites as well, so Lumafusion won't necessarily make anywhere near as much money from Android as they will from the Apple ecosystem. Brandon L asks, ICAV answers, how long does it take to export an episode? I purchased a 16-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro. Converting video files from ProRes to HEVC is terrible. It takes 30 minutes to convert a 3-minute ProRes clip to HVEC Dolby Vision. Do you have any ideas? Honestly, I don't take that long in exporting my videos. I think pretty much they do it in about real time. Early on, they were doing it a bit quicker than that. I was doing a lot less kind of processing. I was doing less color correction, all that sort of stuff. But now, yeah, it comes out about real time. I think there's some things like doing Ken Burns effects, which seems to take a bit longer for the M1. But I'm not using an M1 Pro or an M1 Max. I haven't got those ProRes engines anyway, and I don't shoot in ProRes. I shoot in HVEC, and I export back to MOV, whatever it is that YouTube wants. So that's my process. It does it in about real time. Seems like yours is taking about 10 times that, but I think it might be that you're going from ProRes to HVEC. I'm not sure. That might be it, but let me know down in the comments if any of you guys have more detail on that. Evan Rogers asks, ICAV answers, what's the latest on Apple Silicon production leaks? When should we expect A16 and M2 to go into production? So I would put decent chunk of money on the fact that M2 is already produced, and I would say it's also already in laptops. I think we are going to see it in a couple of weeks, so I don't think there's any real worries there. We know that M3 production has already been tested. That would probably be going into physical production towards the end of this year. In terms of the A16 chips, I would say that they're probably pretty much in production now. That's most likely the case. We know they've done test production of the iPhone 14. We're on 14 now, yeah, that's right. They've done test production of the iPhone 14s. That's just been happening. They've finalised the hardware. We know what it's going to look like, or they do at least. We assume we know what it's going to look like, but you never know until Apple releases it. But that seems to be the case. So I would say pretty much there with A16, and yeah, I think we'll have M3 in production towards the end of this year. And Team Kinetics asks, ICAV answers, now that Apple are working on reducing the size of the notch and have elegant solutions to home screen widgets in portrait mode on iPad, do you think we'll ever see home screen portrait mode on iPhone again? Now, when you say portrait mode here, that's kind of how it already works. You know, you hold it upright, so I'm guessing you mean landscape, because that's what has been going on in the past. It used to be the Plus phones, so the iPhone 6 Plus, the 7 Plus, and the 8 Plus all got that landscape orientation option for the home screen. I don't think it's super useful. I think it's one of those things that if they're going to do it, they need to also integrate what the iPad Pro has, where you can actually use Face ID at multiple angles. That would be something that would be important. I think that's probably the reason that they actually eliminated it for the iPhone 10 when that first came out, and then it would have been, I guess, the XS Max would have probably been the first plus size phone, if you want to call it that. That would be where they would have done it, but because the Face ID only works the one way round, with the iPhones, I don't think it was as practical. I think that's also something that they maybe removed to distract from the fact that you couldn't open it with your face sideways. So just worth bearing in mind. Whether they'll do it again, I'm not sure how much utility it had. I think split screen maybe on the larger iPhones might be something that's legit, for copying a bit of text from a notes document, or pasting from Safari into a notes document, something like that. I think that would be useful. I'm not sure if Apple will do it. I don't think it's a big enough use case for it to be a major feature, if I'm honest. And that's it for today's show, guys. Thank you for your patience this week while I've been super busy working in the cafe. We will try and get back towards the normal schedule of things, but it's never going to be right back to being exactly every weekday at a set time. We're going to go with the flow a little bit, and things change, so it just gives me a little bit more flexibility to put stuff out when stuff happens, and that's what we're going to try and do. We're going to try and keep it a little bit more current. Hopefully you guys are down with that. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one.